If you were one of the people who've spent, goodness knows, years putting this thing together, 25,000 delegates, all the man and woman hours that have gone into this, and probably the last image you wanted to see on day one was the leader of the free world nodding off during the opening speeches.
Well, he is known, Colin, as Sleepy Joe Biden, so it's very fitting for him to be falling asleep. But I have to be quite honest with you. I watched some of the comments myself, and to be quite frank, it's very uninspiring, not very charismatic. And of course, as you've already pointed out in your opening remarks, the hypocrisy that we've seen from these political leaders being jetted in on private jets with, a load of cars with Biden. There's 85 cars, these gas guzzlers and all that kind of stuff. And it really smacks in the face, really, of a lot of normal people like myself who consider this to be hypocrisy, because not only that, what is the cost of this conference? Several £100 million has been suggested. In fact, under a freedom of information request by the Glasgow to the Glasgow Security Services, when it was put out, they refused to give an answer. They said it's the UK government's responsibility. So we don't even know the cost of this yet. And yet here we have politicians demanding that people like us, little people like us, we cut our carbon emissions, and yet they themselves are admitting it more than we are. It's absolute hypocrisy. And I think the people out there, the public and your viewers and watchers of GB News tonight, will realise that and think, this is just hypocrisy. And don't forget, they're going to be treated. There's a reception tonight. I know there'll be champagne, caviar. Of course, there won't be any tax on it. They'll be lavish with loads of wonderful food and drink, all at the taxpayer's expense, may I say. And that, to me, is absolute hypocrisy. And that's what we're seeing right now. And let's be quite frank, it's the 26th COP they've had. It doesn't make a difference because the main players are not in the room. China, America there, we know, but Japan, India, we've heard from the India Prime Minister what they've already said. They're not in the room. So how is this going to have an impact going forward in bringing down the CO2 emissions that we're producing here in the UK? And certainly in the UK, we're one of the lowest. So the real issue is not us, really. It's these other big countries that are pushing out more than we are.
Richard, just in terms of the money that's spent, I mean, you're familiar with the argument. I'll rehearse it for our viewers, and that is that, yes, we could have done this by Zoom, but summitry doesn't always work that way. It works best, so the argument runs. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with this, but the argument runs, it works best if you get these individuals with all this power together physically face-to-face. The chemistry makes things work in a way that can't happen on the end of a Zoom call.
Well, I kind of see that argument. I understand it. But look, we've been, for the last 18 months to 2 years, Colin, we've been under this pandemic where major interactions between political leaders and we've dealt with things through Zoom. Surely that could have been the case this time around. I mean, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm going to. Greta Thunberg, for example, she's saying that, all these politicians, it's just words. I'm actually agreeing with her. I cannot believe I'm agreeing because she should be in school. It's half term now anyway, so she's okay. But nevertheless, I think to myself, she's actually right, because you've got these politicians demanding that we cut emissions ourselves. And yes, they've talked about this green agenda. Now, that goes from electric cars to boilers to taxing our meat. I mean, where's this going to? This green tax that the government is seeking to impose. This is a big government, and it's an overreach into our lives that we're seeing that I've never seen before. It's a Conservative government that claim to be a low tax government, but they're not. In effect, what this will do, it'll be a huge burden for the lowest paid and those who work the hardest in society. Those are the ones that will be affected the most. When you consider changing your heating system, your boiler, going to electric cars and all, people can't afford that. Most people are worrying about how they're going to pay their gas bill, their electric bill this year because of the increase in energy prices. That's what people are concerned about. And most people, Colin, let me be quite honest with you, most people are not watching COP26. They couldn't give a monkey's about what's happening in Glasgow. That is the reality.
Yeah. But as you said, Richard, they will care about having to install a new heat pump or buy a new car, that sort of thing. And I suppose the test is that if they really don't like it, in a couple of years hence, there'll be a general election. And if they are so annoyed about what this government signed up to at COP26, they'll get a chance to vote them out. That's the way it works. That's the way it works for all the democracies present at COP26 over the next fortnight. If they sign their nations up, their people up, to a set of ambitious targets that cost the earth for their people back home to implement, then they'll be on the hook, because that's how democracies work. If we don't like it, we really don't like it, then we get the chance to vote out this government in a year or two. That's the way it works.
Yeah, I think Boris has had this Damascus Road experience to the green agenda. I mean, maybe it's his father's influence, we really don't know, but it seems as if he's kind of hell-bent on this whole green agenda, and I don't think it's going to help him in the next general election. I don't believe that there's enough voters out there that would be sympathetic towards his cause. Yes, there's a lot of younger people, and it's almost popular now. It's kind of like the in thing for young people to be into this green agenda, the Greta Thunberg kind of cult, if you like. That I understand that, but I don't think this is going to work in Boris's favour. I think it's working against him. I think this government is not what certainly a lot of people I've heard across social media have said. You know, this isn't the Conservative government that I voted for.